In this example scene, we're trying to set up some CG elements to fit this background image. So this is just an example, but I'm taking a single frame from the footage that I would use and keeping that in the background so I can track how this object moves along. So it's as if this cube here is a vehicle that moves through my scene. So it's supposed to track along that road, does reasonably, and drives past the camera as if it was a bus. So I've just removed a component there, which was this ground plane. And what this is doing is it's not supposed to be rendered in the final scene, but I need it to catch the shadows of the bus as it renders. So what I've done to do this is I've assigned a new material to that, and because I'm rendering with Arnold, I'm using the Arnold Shader, and I'm finding one in here which is for shadows. So I think it's Shadow Matte, AI Shadow Matte, and I apply that to this object. It comes up AI Shadow Matte 2. And when I actually render this, I would remove this background image from my scene so I can bring that back on top. So to keep that out of the scene when I render it, I'll go to the channel box layer editor, and what I'm looking for is the layer editor here, and I will create a layer from selected. So I've selected the background image there, and I just want to turn that off while I'm doing this render. So all I want is this cube, which represents a vehicle. So when I render this, just have a quick check of my render settings. Arnold Renderer. I'm going to bring the quality right down on these, so it should be 1 on all of these. Just so it renders very quickly, but I wouldn't advise that if you're looking for quality there. The other thing I've added to the scene, I do have a sky dome light, but I've got a directional light as well. So if I look at that, it does have an angle so that it can show a shadow, and this is what's really going to cast the shadow and bring this element to this as well. The directional light doesn't have to be pointed like a spotlight, but when I render this, I'm seeing this object here. It's very low quality because I've brought the render settings down, but I am catching this shadow on the ground as well. So that allows me to actually then, if I save this image, bus shadow, I just checked how I saved it actually. When I save image, I should check, yeah, it's PNG, so that's fine. PNG has the ability to include an alpha matte, which means the background will be transparent. So at the moment it's all white. If I find that in my system, in projects, just open this up. It's gone into a shadow. You can see there that it's actually it's not white in that area. I do have white in the background. I think that's probably my sky dome. So the way I've lit that, I may take that out for this part. But the ground plane is showing an alpha channel, and we can test that again by bringing that into After Effects. So what I'll do, I'll just drag that into my project window and drag that on top of this scene here, and we'll see that there it's not rendered at the same resolution, but you can see that that's cut out that area there as well, but it's got that shadow in there. So that will allow me, if I do a shadow pass with that, to be able to make that more subtle. I might do one with the shadow and one without. If I press T on the keyboard, it gives me a shortcut to get the opacity, and I can blend that shadow slightly with this. So going back to my scene in Maya, I would consider getting rid of the sky dome light in this case. So add selected objects to my hidden areas. And then when I look at my parameters for this ground plane that I'm using, I'm go into the attribute editor, find that material. I can change the shadow color to grey. If I want that to be grey, I can have an opacity to it. If I want that to be 30%, and it's saving the alpha mask. So this time when I render it, it should come out slightly differently. So I've got that grey area there. I'm hoping that's got the opacity to it, but I can't really tell until I've saved that and composited that onto another item. So once I've done that, again I'm going to drop that into After Effects, and instead of putting that into the scene here, I can replace the footage. If I hold down Alt when I drag that on, it will replace that footage with my new file, and I can see how that's working there. It's not really giving me a transparency on that shadow, so I need to work that slightly differently, and I'll probably do 2 render passes, one for the shadow that I can make transparent, and then one again in here for potentially I could hide that and just get the bus on its own. So if I bring that into my hidden layer, if I wanted the high quality version of the bus, I can up these parameters here to normal and render those, and that will give me just the bus on its own. I'm not getting the side of the bus, but that might be just come out black. Oh yeah, the lighting needs to be fixed because we changed that. So we need to use lighting without the sky dome on that one. But I would probably have a second pass of this in terms of rendering, just to save the bus on that. And again, drop that into the After Effects window, and if I have that selected, hold down Alt. No, I don't want to swap that out, I want that to go over the top. So because I've changed the parameters of that, I would probably duplicate that layer and then use the Alt button to bring that on. That should change it for my, no, I want a new one, it's got a different name. 3, and then finally make sure the final part is solid. So we can see how that works. If I bring on the, if I change where that city block is, I should be able to see how the shadows work on that as well. So that's kind of solid with a shadow, blending it into the scene slightly as well. Does that help your kind of workflows and ideas about that? And similarly, you would probably work with some of the levels in here just to give yourself a different look to the bus that wasn't quite so, just add some grain onto it or something like that, so it wasn't so solid. What is that coming up over there? So yeah, you can change that afterwards as well, but that's really kind of a good way of working with that.